Feuds have crept out of the Hollywood gutter again recently, courtesy of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni in their very different ways of promoting the new movie It Ends With Us. Jeannine, you saw Strange Darling as well. We'll be talking about that and getting into, do we need to take sides in all this Hollywood drama? That, much more on today's episode. Welcome back to the Madness. Hello everyone, welcome back to Monday Madness with Morgan and the Machine. Why drama? Why do we need it? What's the point?
I mean, it's Hollywood, so there's always going to be a little bit of drama.
Does this even need to be drama? Well, in a way, I suppose it kind of does, but should it need to be drama? All this, it ends with us nonsense between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, or does one of them, who shall be renamed or shall remain nameless? God, I can't get my words out all the time being. I can't even remember what I was going to say now. My train of thought has been completely derailed. Madness on today's Monday Madness.
On brand, if nothing else, on brand.
I was planning on making a humorous point, and it's been completely derailed by my own stutter.
It's fine. It's fine. It's okay.
Absolutely incredible behavior. Basically, does it need to be drama, or does one of them just need to stop playing silly around, which I think is exactly what needs to happen, to be honest.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be drama at all. It's nonsense.
No, the message of the movie, I think, is pretty important for it to be overshadowed by this kind of drama. We'll get into it more, obviously, when we discuss it. But, I mean, at this point, I think a lot of things have been speculated and not confirmed. But the narrative is kind of all over the place. And I think the court of public opinion has kind of been, I think it was pretty split down the middle for a while, but I think one side is kind of winning in this situation. So we'll get into that for sure.
And is the court of public opinion even a good and worthwhile thing? Not usually. Not usually. No, it can be incredibly extreme and take things to places it doesn't need to go to. And I think to a degree that's kind of what we're dealing with in this sense. But also, I think at least the court of public opinion appears to be on a more reasonable side of this debate. But as we say, do we even need the drama? Is it even important to us to get involved, to pick sides between X person and Y person in various Hollywood feuds and dramas across the years? Does it even matter to anyone but the people involved? Why do we get so invested into it? It's a bit of a crazy thing anyway, but we will ask the question to start today's episode, Jeannine, before all that discussion. So, Jeannine.
Well, there's something's up with me. I decided to go to an early screening event of Strange Darling. They were doing an early screening with a live stream Q&A after the film. So I thought it would be fun to check it out. This film was one of those where I think I saw the trailer during Maxine, and it was a very ambiguous trailer, kind of telling you go in blind. You're not going to want to know what happens until you see it, kind of thing. And I always love a movie that gives you that disclaimer because you know you're in for something really interesting. It almost reminds me of films like Witness for the Prosecution or The Bad Seed, that at the end of the film, they give you this little kind of title card that says, please do not spoil this film for anybody coming to see this movie.
Yeah.
So keep the twists and turns of the film to yourself, kind of thing. So that this movie is definitely on that level. Um,
Okay.
in terms of where it goes. What was really intriguing about this film as well is that it had Giovanni Ribisi as the cinematographer. So I
Oh,
think it's
that's right. I think
rare.
we talked about this a few
Yes.
weeks ago, didn't we?
Yes, I think it's rare to see an actor go cinematographer. I mean, we've seen actors write, we've seen actors direct, produce, but I don't know that we've really seen any go the cinematographer route. And he really has
Yeah.
a beautiful eye. I mean, the use of color was very saturated and and then in kind of more sinister moments or more kind of uh character focused moments, we were getting flashes of neon light or people just basked in red light and things like that.
Okay.
So it very much was giving me Tarantino in the essence on how it used color. It felt like kind of the bright colors that you saw in something like Death Proof when, you know, it's black and white, and then we get that kind of, click, and then everything turns to
Yeah.
color. It was definitely kind of giving me that vibe, especially with it, actually being, made with film cameras. So,
Very nice.
definitely.
Always good.
Yes, yes, so it had this kind of vintage vibe to it as well in the look of it, so it looked great color-wise, you know, obviously, you know, there's parts that are muted, but then other parts that are just really kind of brightly saturated. It's a very small film, but the pacing of it and it has a very again, very Tarantino in its storytelling, like, it kind of gives you pieces out of sequence and then kind of puts it all together in a cool way.
Okay. I
Um
like how you appear to be keeping things close to the chest, as the
Yes.
movie would want you to.
Yes, so I'm trying to kind of talk about this film without giving anything away because you definitely wanna go in blind. It definitely brings up some really interesting conversations related to the very, topical conversation, of the, man versus bear hypothetical. So it really
Oh, right, yeah.
kind of addresses that kind of talking point in an interesting way. Great performances. Our lead actress, I'm blanking on her name right now.
I can
Um,
find it.
she was incredible. She had a lot to do in this film, and she definitely was very captivating. I believe she was in Fall of the House of Usher, is what I've seen her in before. And then
No.
just Kyle Gallner, he's kind of like making a name for himself as the kind of scream king. He's done so much horror and has been really uh shining, and he's great in this film as well. So yeah, it feels almost contained because you're really focusing on these two characters. Other characters kind of come in tangentially, but you're really more mostly focused on their two characters. And you're not in a ton of locations. So it feels very focused, and I liked that about it. So just kind of the structure of the storytelling, the look of the film, very lush and colorful, but also very kind of vintage and kind of grimy. Um,
Nice.
and just great performances, really great twists and turns. I really, really enjoyed it. So I think it comes out fully on the 23rd. But yeah, it was a great Q&A as well. The Q&A was the director, Giovanni Ribisi, the lead actress, and Carlo Cucino was moderating. So
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Willa Fitzgerald, by the way, is the lead
Yes.
actress of
Yes.
this. She played the younger version of Madeline Usher in The
Yeah.
Fall of the House of Usher. You are
Yeah.
quite right there. I enjoy dark movies that are physically bright, and that's exactly what this movie
Yes.
sounds like.
Yes.
Um, that sound it seems to be sensorily, that's not a word, but you know what I mean, interesting. It will
Yes,
shove light at you, it will shove color at you, it will intimidate you with it, it will overwhelm you with it, while all the internal ideas are playing around and pinging around in your mind about
100%.
what's going on and who's going, who's going where
Yes.
and exactly who is who. All this color will just be, shooting into you, and you won't quite know what's where in
Yes.
physical sense as well as in the mental sense, which I
Yes.
enjoy about that kind of thing.
Yeah,
It does seem, very, very,
very
very
interesting.
interesting. And you say, you know, Ribisi going from actor to cinematographer, you don't think about that a lot because you think, okay, how visual really are actors? They're performative, sure,
Mhm.
they're in front of everything, sure, but they're internal people, right? And being a cinematographer is a very external thing. It's a
Yeah,
very you are seeing things, you're not
a certain way.
internalizing anything.
Yeah.
um Acting is kind of different for that, whatever your style of acting,
Yeah,
it's
and you're
real.
not yeah, and you're not focused on what things around you are gonna look like. You're focused on what you're supposed to do as your
Yeah,
character to another character. You're more focused on that aspect as opposed to kind of the world around you because that can be made up later in post or whatever the director or the cinematographer is gonna do after the fact. So, it's very kind of inner focused. So to have somebody who has performed in that inner focused way to be able to also kind of have this external view of the world that the film takes place in, um, it is really interesting. So yeah, I mean, I'm
yeah,
glad I was able to kind of get that across because how you described what you feel from the look of the film definitely it is kind of spot on to what I was getting. Very much kind of finding a way to attract all of your senses simultaneously. So
it really does. It sounds very, very interesting. You said August 23rd it should
yes.
be out. Whether that's in Britain as well at that time, I don't know. Probably not. But I'll seek it
Yeah,
out.
and I
I
do
will
believe it's
definitely.
sitting right now at, like, a pretty high percentage on Rotten Tomatoes, like a 98 or 100 just right now with
Not that
critics.
that's relevant. We don't care about that. Away with it.
Yes, but I mean, people look at those things.
People
Um,
do. We don't.
yes.
I don't.
But, yes, I think I saw on the Today Show or something, they mentioned Giovanni Ribisi was on, and they talked about, yeah, just right out the gate with just critic scores, it has, like, I think 100%. So,
Okay, very
yeah.
nice, very nice. I suppose it's interesting to think about as well, this whole idea of please don't spoil it for anybody that the movie directly wants you to not do,
Yes, and even in
or
the
or at least
Q&A
feels like that.
yeah, even in the Q&A, they were very much like, "Please, don't say anything, please." And even when they were kind of having the live discussion, they were very much, like, trying not to say too much, so
I always commend, and I commend you for speaking about that movie in very vague terms as was appropriate, because there's people out there, Janine, they do exist. I know full well these people
yeah.
who can't not have something spoiled for them, who need to
Yes.
know everything about everything before seeing something, and it can spoil things.
Yes, or they
It's
don't
called a spoiler for a reason. It can
yes.
ruin things.
Or yeah, they don't think about how it's going to spoil things for other people when they just start talking about it or they're not really conscious. I literally follow somebody, he's a great horror creator on TikTok, but almost every holiday season, he finds a way to spoil Better Watch Out, and he'll literally
No.
say the twist. Like, he's just
No,
talking
that's no.
about it, and I'm just like, "No, don't
No, it's a
ruin
good
this movie for
movie.
people," because it's not a big enough people that everyone or big enough movie that everyone would have seen. There's still going to be people who can stumble upon it and get that nice surprise of what that film does.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but this creator every time, he'll talk about, like, a specific genre of film, and then name that movie, which the genre of film that he names is literally, like, spoiling the twist. I'm just like, I've seen him literally make 3 different videos talking about it. So I think he's talking about, like, on holiday horror films, on, like, that specific genre, which I won't say. Um, so I'm just like, "Oh, dude,
Yeah.
no." So, yes, I'm trying to keep the surprise for people because it definitely goes in some interesting, really cool directions. So,
Good, yes. Strange Darling. We'll
yeah,
keep a good eye out for it, and
yes.
I'll go and see it. I think it sounds like something that's very, very worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lots of little inspirations you can see. I mean, it opens very much, with a Texas Chainsaw-esque vibe, and we also get a
Mm,
famous narrator with that. I believe they said at the live Q&A that Jason Patrick does, like, the open narration, kind of telling
okay.
us that this is based off of a certain thing that's real, true story kind of
Oh,
thing.
right. So
Yeah,
but is
yeah.
it? Or is it exactly like
Yeah,
Texas
I don't know
Chainsaw?
if it's yes, if they're saying it's real and it's not. So it's very much it opens kind of like that with Jason Patrick. Um,
That I think that is truly one of my very
yeah,
favourite things about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the fact that it just completely presents itself as a telling of a true story that is
yeah,
just completely false. It's
yes.
hilarious to me how it can do it so legitimately and so
Because 'cause I'm sure
genuinely.
people forever thought it was like a true thing, and then just having that eerie camera sound just now be this kind of like sinister noise every time you hear that like
Oh, yeah,
camera
the
sound, it just like
high-pitched whine.
yes, yeah, so
Yeah,
good. So, yeah.
it is. It is. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. Strange Darling. Something to get excited about. Something else to get excited about is something I've seen this week. It's perhaps less exciting for the general population, but it's exciting for me, and I think it's
Mm.
exciting for you as well, because there's a new uh, big, nice coffee table book on Columbia
Oh.
Pictures coming out. I think it's
Oh.
The Lady with the Torch. It's
Yes.
um, and a coffee table book on Columbia
Nice.
Pictures from 1929 to 1959. A great 30 years for Columbia
Yeah.
Pictures,
Mhm.
obviously. And I've seen it be posted around, and I don't think it's quite available yet, but it's certainly starting its kind of promo
Yeah.
now. And a few people that I follow on social media are obviously the movie writers and essayists and the people you find on Blu-ray special features and things like that,
Yeah.
who have contributed to the book and had pieces
Oh,
written and
cool.
articles in the book and all this kind of stuff. And it's just exactly the kind of thing I would very much like to have,
Yeah.
because having things like that just opens your minds to all these different things. And I like many, many movies from Columbia of that time. Obviously, I have huge noir sets behind me from
From
Columbia,
Columbia.
5 volumes of it there, and soon to be
Yeah.
6.
No, that sounds awesome. I mean, f I think off the top of my head, I don't know that, like, people really think of Columbia in that early era of film. I think they're always thinking about MGM or, RKO or,
Yeah, MGM, RKO, Paramount,
yes.
Universal, I suppose, for monsters and things.
Yeah, so they rarely, I think, bring up or think about Columbia in the early era, but they made a ton of films, so
It's because I think Columbia falls into the category of, it's not thought of as the big of the big
yeah.
movie makers, but it still exists, obviously. You still get the Columbia Pictures logo at the
Yeah,
start of movies. The Lady with the Torch, of course.
yeah.
Um, but it seems to me to fall into a category of its own, where it's more interesting than your Paramount, MGM, Foxes that are kind of Warner that are doing the same, at the time that are doing their set, they have their favorite type of movies of the
Yeah.
era, and they're doing a good chunk of them and a good chunk of them and a good chunk of them each. And it's not obviously one of the poverty row studios that are just making movies for absolutely no money and trying to make any sort of profit on any
Yeah.
sort of movie possible. It seems to fall in between for me. It obviously has, at the time, perhaps the most unlikable studio head going in
Oh.
Harry Cohn, who is just a despicable
Oh.
man. So it makes everything more interesting
Yeah.
that he's running this madhouse of, if he doesn't say something goes, it won't go, and people
Yeah.
battle him for it and fight him for it for creative purposes and everything like that.
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear much more about that kind of stuff and how some of Columbia's great movies of that era, of those 30 years, get made almost despite Harry Cohn, but
Yeah.
also because of him, I suppose, in ways. Clearly a very intelligent man, clearly a very, savvy businessman, just
Yeah.
a true Hollywood
Yeah.
studio head,
Typical. Yeah.
horrific individual.
Yeah.
Um, but it's very, very interesting. It does,
Yeah.
it's always seemed to me, like I said, that studio that falls in between those two types of movie making, in that
Yeah.
it's as wild as some of the cheap studios, but also has the finances and has the quality
Yeah.
of the MGMs, Paramounts, and Warners
Big
of
names.
the
Yeah.
time, and Foxes. Um, and it's very, very
Good.
interesting. I like things like that. So that's just been seemingly out this week. Um, Something else I just thought I might mention, though, that
Yeah.
I've been getting a little bit excited about. I've been playing a bit of golf and
Ooh.
trying to actually get into playing some golf. Not like proper golf yet, just
Yeah.
little course golf at the moment.
Well, you're a good
But
putter. Mhm.
well, yeah, not. Mini golf's different, you see. Mini golf is very different, obviously. It requires virtually no technique to be good at,
I
and,
mean, for some.
course golf does require a level of
Yes.
technique to be
Yeah.
good at, and it's tough, but I find myself improving, and I'm going reasonably frequently. Like,
Okay.
during the week, I've been
Oh,
having, like, an hour after work in an evening and things like that sometimes.
okay. I like
It's
that.
it's it's good, it's fun, it's interesting. I think I can enjoy it. I think I find it a therapeutic experience, which is an unusual thing to say, given
No,
it's known at no, it isn't. It is an unusual thing
I
to say,
don't
given
think
that it's
so.
known as one of the most frustrating sports to possibly play
I
because
mean,
you feel like everything's going so well, and then you've swung, and then it's gone about 20 yards along the ground.
well, I feel like there's a lot of elements of golf that feel very meditative. Like it's a very
Mm.
open, quiet space. It requires kind of very little sound to concentrate and focus on what you're doing. You're out in nature. So I don't know.
A good
It's like,
walk.
yes, you're getting exercise, just being out in the air, walking in kind of mostly quiet. I think that sounds very meditative. I mean, for me, I actually enjoy hand washing my car. I find that very meditative.
Okay. I mean, it can be very meditative unless you've got a party of 3 directly behind you while you're
Oh,
trying to
yeah,
change
trying to,
your
like,
mind, and
rush you along. Yeah.
they keep finishing the previous hole
Yeah.
quick, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, "Just give me a minute, please."
Yes.
That's not very meditative at all.
And that's
That
true.
comes with pressure, and then you end
Yeah.
up not
Not
playing
doing as well because 'cause you're just trying to
nice
hurry up.
shots.
Yeah.
But it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress, and I've only really started thinking about properly playing in the last couple of months.
Okay, well, no, that's
Um,
good.
so
I'm
I'm
glad you're
hoping to
getting
develop.
out.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
hoping to develop into, you know, longer holes, better swings with the larger clubs, keep a certain level of consistency can't even come for the great golfers in the world, can it? So you can't wish for that too much, but you can wish, I think, for a knowledge of an ability that you can play
Yeah.
that shot
You
if you want
understand.
to
You
play that
yeah,
shot.
you could
You
give it a
know
good
how
effort.
to, and it's then just about the focus and the technique of knowing how to.
Yeah.
And if I can develop, my brother has started properly playing as well. Like,
Okay.
he's more serious about it than me. So me, him, and my dad will go,
Oh,
like,
that's
every week
nice.
to just
Uh,
the little course, the little, like, par 3
yeah.
course,
Oh, that's
and
great.
see what we can do there. Um, but no, I'd like to develop so I can start full course. Um, I don't know. It's obviously, like, August now. Golf
Yeah.
season is
It's
might wane
fast
away in a couple of
ending.
months.
Yeah.
Um, but maybe next year. I don't know. Depends on what happens. I want to have like a lesson as well, like a swing lesson.
Oh, okay.
Um, but maybe I'm not going to put a time frame on it. I would want
Yeah,
to
no, just take your time.
reasonably soon be confident enough to go and play a longer
Yeah.
course.
No, I
'Cause I've
like
just been
that.
going to the same local
Ye
course, you know?
Yeah. No, I like that you're putting some interest into a new skill. Maybe it'll help you appreciate, the cinematic wonder that is Billy Madison a little bit more. Or I mean, Happy Gilmore, like
Yeah, I was gonna say Billy Madison's got
Yeah,
nothing
no,
to do with
Happy
golf,
Gilmore,
has it?
Happy Gilmore.
It doesn't. It just makes me appreciate an actual good golf comedy in Caddyshack more, which I think is one of the funniest movies ever made anyway.
But I mean, Happy Gilmore actually has a lot more golfing in it, like actual golf.
Irrelevant, Caddyshack has enough golf in it, and he's entirely set
Caddyshack
on
does
a golf
not have
course.
Carl Weathers.
Caddyshack has, Ted Knight, though, who
I don't know.
with everybody in that movie, Ted Knight is inexplicably the funniest performance.
I don't know. I'd rather see Bob Barker get in a fight with Adam Sandler.
I would rather see Rodney Dangerfield wear outrageous pants.
Okay, fair enough. Agree to
Yes.
disagree.
As we move in to our Let's Talk
Day
today, we're getting back into the Hollywood drama, Jeannine. Let's pull the
Yeah.
question up and get into it. Do we need to take sides in Hollywood drama? I think it's fairly clear that if it wasn't fairly clear with my stuttering and fumbling at the beginning of the show, I was trying to suggest that there was only one reasonable opinion to have on this Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni. It ends with us debate, and it is the stance of Justin Baldoni.
I mean, as I said, all of this is kind of speculated, and we're just kind of putting pieces together based off of what we're seeing, Blake do in her promotion, what we're seeing Justin do in his promotion. So all of this kind of started when we get to the premiere and mm, Justin's not taking pictures with really any of the cast. He's very separate from them.
He
Um,
is the director of the movie as
Yes,
well.
and stars in the film as the abusive husband, as this is a film about abuse, and domestic violence. Um, and, the sleuths also kind of looked at the fact that nobody follows him on Instagram.
The sleuths. Who are the sleuths?
I mean
Internet Sherlock Holmes is here,
internet
and
sleuths
Poirot.
are a thing. They will well, we've also seen them now, in kind of choosing the side that they want to, be on, uh, have since dug up old interviews and things of Blake not being the kindest person.
Who has the
So,
time to do this?
I mean, it's the internet. They have a
Well,
time for a lot of things. So, yeah, that's kind of how it started, him feeling very separate from the rest of the cast, but nobody really talking about it. Then people just finding it look weird that, like, it's being promoted as grab your girlfriends and go see this movie. It's fun. There's hot guys. Like, that's kind of how they were promoting it.
and we're
Blake
just
was
like we're just sat here going, "Hold on a moment." I
wait, wait, wait,
thought
wait, wait.
but this
Yeah.
right, so one, this was a book, if I remember rightly. This was
Yes.
a book, and,
Yes.
this is a movie about an abusive relationship. Doesn't sound like it's a fun grab your
Yeah,
girls,
girls,
get all
yes.
party time movie, does
Get
it
all dressed up in
really?
your florals and go see this movie. On the red carpet, she's selling her drink line and her new hair care products, and so people are very much thinking that's odd. And then when you look at Justin's end of things, before doing this movie, he had been a really big advocate in, trying to, kind of get rid of male, toxicity and things like
Mm,
that, and, he was very vocal about the Harvey Weinstein stuff, whereas now the sleuths again pull up articles where she kind of talks about, "Well, I didn't have that experience," and, kind of very much aloof about the situation because it didn't happen to her.
which is not a good look, is it really? It's not a good
No. He had and then since making this film, he has been very vocal about, domestic violence and advocating for, victims and things like that. And,
That's the
sharing
point of the movie.
sharing
Surely
outlets
that's the point of the
yes,
movie. He
sharing
has
outlets where
directed the
people can
movie.
be sharing outlets where people can get help and things like that. He had a very close conversation with the director, before making the film about how he wanted to portray
The
this
writer,
character
you
or
mean the
the
writer?
the writer
Yeah.
of the film of the book, about how he wanted to portray this character. He wanted the Blake Lively character to be shown some grace in because I mean there's that stigma of victims to have people kind of tell them, "Oh, why don't you just leave? How could you stay in that
Mm,
situation for so long?" And they get this kind of judgment for staying. He wanted to portray this character of this abuser as a really good guy and have the audience really fall in love with him so that we would be able to understand Blake's character's perspective of why she stayed with him, why she stayed in that situation. And he was really approaching it as I think the best characters who play villains do, in the fact that he's the villain, but he himself is not seeing himself as a villain. He's going into it thinking he's a good guy, and it's just the victim of his circumstance, but he's the hero of his story. So, for him to play it that way where he's this wonderful guy that we fall in love with who does these terrible things, it really brings a really interesting and realistic dynamic to why women would stay in that situation. And so people are kind of speculating that that's where the conflict came from between the two of them. She wanted to kind of show her character as bigger and greater than the abuse that she was dealing with, and he wanted to portray kind of this realism in why she would stay with somebody like that. Um, so she kind of wanted to go beyond and actually focus on the lighter, uh, grab your girls kind of side of things, and he wanted to really tell a real story that dealt with the abuse aspects of it. So people are thinking that's where the divide between the two of them came in because she was a producer on the film. So they
yeah.
both, I'm hearing rumors that they both kind of had different ways they wanted to edit the film. And because Justin was the director, they ended up going with his edit, but then she brought in Ryan, her husband, Ryan Reynolds, to rewrite scenes and help edit things and edit a cut for her, and so
And
that's kind of
you would think Ryan Reynolds had enough on his plate, what with
yes.
Deadpool and, the upcoming football season. Let's not forget he's the owner
Yes.
of a football club. He
Yes.
doesn't need to be getting involved in this, whether he did or not. He doesn't need to be getting involved in this, and we shouldn't be playing I'm bigger than you, look at my husband, look at our status in Hollywood, what I say goes. We shouldn't be playing that game
Yeah.
either, because that's unpleasant.
Yeah.
Once we start getting like that, we start turning into Harry Cohn, don't we? Who I was talking about before, and going,
Yes, being
I'm the
kind of
biggest person in this
yes.
room. My opinion is the only opinion that matters. Go away, everybody else, no matter if you are actually the director and creative behind this movie.
Yes, and, I think the narrative really was against Justin at first because, like, everyone unfollowed him. Everyone seemed like they were on Blake's side. A TMZ headline came out saying that he made people feel uncomfortable on set, um, in terms of kind of wanting to do things a certain way, talking about, um, supposedly, like, he let a kiss linger too long that they shared on set or something.
I see.
So, that was kind of what was brewing at first, but then people since kind of looking into it more have seen that, just in how she's promoting it, in terms of how he's promoting it, he's really advocating for the abuse aspects and wanting to tell that story and, kind of highlight the importance of abuse survivors and things like that, whereas she is not really talking about any of that. And it was only until kind of the criticism came where now she's posting on her story like 1 in 4 women, da, 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 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even in the interviews are for this movie are really strange. Somebody asked her, people who might relate to the aspects of this film, abuse survivors, they might want to come and talk to you about this movie. How should they approach you if they want to talk about relating or connecting to the abuse elements in the story? And she just starts talking about how, oh, well, maybe I could give them my phone number or my address, or, what do you think is the best way that I could talk to them? Kind of just really not taking it seriously, only really talking about the clothes that she wears in the movie. Like, they asked kind of like her chemistry with the romantic interest that I assume she gets with when she leaves this abusive relationship, and he was kind of like, "Oh, I don't know how we were able to convince falling in love. We didn't really talk about it." Like the vibe in the
Is that
interviews
is
is
that what
just
he
very
sounded? Was that an accurate impression? Oh,
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what
Well,
it
I
was
don't
doing.
know. I don't really talk about it.
Sounds like you're doing a bad impression of Jimmy Stewart. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It
But
wasn't Jimmy Stewart. It
no, no,
wasn't.
no, definitely not.
Definitely wasn't Jimmy
But the
Stewart.
interviews just feel very weird. She's not really talking about anything serious in that aspect. She's still trying to play this like fun, take your girlfriends vibe. So I feel
It's
like,
weird though. It's
yeah,
it's a
it's very
weird
weird.
situation, because as an opinion, you kind of understand both things. It's like, do you want a grey movie or do you want a black and white movie?
Yes, I
If
mean,
you
I
want
get
if you
I'm
want a black and white movie, it's perfectly fine. Clearly, I think Blake Lively wants this black and white movie where the abuser is pure villain and her
yeah,
character is,
rises
better
above
than
it.
that, and rises above it, and gets past it, and this is good. But is that I don't know if that's the case for the actual story, and that is the desire then of Blake Lively for
Yeah,
her character, whatever has actually happened with the movie. Which is fine, in concept and fine in idea, and also clearly does portray the abuser as the villain. I mean,
yeah.
that's the main point, right? Portray them as the villain.
Yes,
If you're
yes.
portraying them as anything other than the villain, we've got a bigger issue on our hands, I think.
Well, yes, I mean,
But
I think that is where the disconnect is. She wanted it to be pure villain, and he wanted to play some nuance into being this character that we fall in love with and then see him do these terrible things. So there's this really harsh juxtaposition, and it gives grace to her character in terms of why she would stay in that relationship, because he's such a good person other than this horrible thing that he's doing. And she
Exactly.
wanted
So
him
this
to
is
be seen purely as a villain. So I think they're kind of not being on the same page with that sounds like that could be a huge reason with the conflict.
yeah, so this is the grey element that
Yeah.
Baldoni wants to do, where I have to assume he's still clearly a villain. He's just he's charismatic. He's very charming. It is easy to see he wants to portray this person, or wanted to portray this person, as likable, as lovable, as somebody that you could see why this relationship would blossom in its early stages
Yeah.
and grow. Um, but is capable of this horrific thing.
Yeah.
And surely that is a more true to life depiction of that thing. As harsh a topic as it is, as really awful a topic as
Yeah.
it is to talk about, it's really something I can't stand that happens, to be honest with you, at all. I think it's one of the most unpleasant things you can possibly do if
Yeah.
you're, in a relationship that's supposed to be based on love, trust, respect, and care for each other.
Yeah.
To be doing that sort of stuff, whoever you are in whatever relationship you're in, that has to be said as well.
Yeah.
But the true to life aspect of it is that individuals who may do that are not, you know, mustache twirling cartoon villains that walk around the streets and go about their lives with the fists up, looking like they're going to hit anybody at any given time. They're not doing that. That's
Yeah,
silly to
there's
think
layers
about
to
them
them.
doing that.
There's a personality there that their partner fell in love with before they became this person.
There has to
So,
be, right? Because you don't actually just fall in love with a pure evil person. Pure evil
yeah, there had to be
very
some
rarely
moments there
exists, you
where
know?
they totally drew you in. So, I think it's interesting, and I think it's smart for him to want to have played that. But I also get her side in wanting to sell this movie, from a
Yeah,
promotional
sure, but you've
aspect.
got to sell it in an accurate
Yes.
way.
Like, so I understand the thought process in selling it the way she wants to sell it, but I don't know that that was the right choice, because
See, I
now.
I I don't think I understand the thought process in selling it how she wants to sell it. I understand the thought process in wanting to sell it full stop. I understand the thought process of her wanting it to be a more, black and white depiction, a more
Yeah.
obvious, um, strengthening, empowerment, depiction. But, that's from what I can gather, that's not what the story is. It's not about that.
Yeah,
It's
and I
supposed
mean,
to be this nuanced, interesting conversation story
yeah,
of how this can happen,
and
what
how do
it
you
takes
kind
to
of,
move
yeah,
on from that.
yes,
It's
and move
not
forward from
this,
that. Mhm.
it's not necessarily something that we're talking about on, the Brave New Women series on Morgan hasn't seen, where it's clearly very, I'm taking charge of my own life now. It's not quite at that level
Yeah.
of a story. It's supposed to be the dramatic conversation piece. Clearly, that's what Baldoni sees in it. Clearly, that's what he wants to portray in it. And with how he's been promoting the movie as this very, you know, if this story and movie has affected you in a personal way, here are all these helplines. Here's this
Yeah.
help you can get. Let's destigmatize the victims
Victims,
of it
yeah.
of it all, and help them, and help to eradicate this parasite of domestic
Yeah, this
violence
cycle of
in the world.
abuse, yeah.
where Blake seems to be like, yeah, domestic violence happens. We've just got to kind of fight it back. And like, why can't we go to the source? Why can't we just try and eradicate it completely? Don't accept that it's there
Yeah.
as something to move on from. Get rid of it at the source,
Yeah.
and that seems to be Baldoni's
Yes, and
viewpoint.
advocate for people who maybe are scared to move forward and get help and really tell their stories and that kind of thing. But just for her to be so dismissive of, that question in that interview, asking about how would you talk to fans who relate to it, um, and her seemingly not really wanting to even talk about or really any of the cast outside of Justin really talking about the kind of deeper issues and serious issues in the film feels kind of weird. So I
Yeah.
think this type of promotion probably would have played if everyone was on board, but it seems like because Justin was the only one who wasn't is what kind of put him on the outskirts of everybody. And I think it's now more easily to believe that Blake is maybe the issue because the sleuths have been digging and there was an interviewer, I think a Norwegian interviewer who put out an interview that she did with her in like 2016, where it's kind of the headlines titled the interview that made me want to quit my job and like made me cry kind of thing. And you see this interview, and the interview is just kind of asking simple questions. She's like congratulating her on her baby bump and it's not like she's revealing it in this interview. This was something that had been revealed that
Mm.
she's pregnant and has a baby bump. And Blake didn't seem to like that at all. So she immediately gets dismissive of the interviewer, turns completely away from her, and is just talking to her co star, Parker Posey, the whole time. Then she asks about, "Oh, this is a movie set in a specific time period of whatever, like, Woody Allen movie it was."
Mm.
And
We,
she
we,
asks
we
her
don't like that
yes, and we don't
either.
like that either. So, like, obviously her kind of very light take on Weinstein and then to be in a Woody Allen film, like,
Mm.
Um uh, and she asked her about the clothes, like, "Oh, did you enjoy wearing those kind of vintage kind of outfits?" And she's just like, "I wonder if they would have asked a man about the clothes." Like, she's almost trying to fabricate this Anne Hathaway, Scarlett Johansson interviewers constantly asking them about their skin tight superhero suits and them clapping back. She's almost trying to play that situation like that when that is not what is happening at all. And then she
Yeah.
proceeds to just have a conversation with Parker Posey and ignore the interviewer who's just sitting there. And you just kind of see the excitement of her to kind of ask these questions just kind of drain out of her because they're just totally ignoring her and kind of being mean
Mm.
girls. Um, so things like that are kind of coming to the surface. I think people are calling out attention to the fact that she's a nepo baby, which I don't think a lot of people knew.
I
Um
mean, how many times can we possibly talk about nepo babies on Modern
Yes,
Madness? It's
yes,
ridiculous at this
yes, that I think her father was an actor. I think her mother's like a casting director. Obviously, her sister Robin Lively, her brother is also her half brother's also an actor. I think he was the guy who played the first Rusty in
in
National Lam
Vacation.
yes, yes. I wanna say he was the first Rusty,
The
maybe?
the first was Vacation. No, Anthony Michael Hall was in
Was the first run. Yeah, so
Vacation.
the second
Yeah.
the second he was the second Rusty when they go to, I think
In European Vacation.
European, yes, he's the European
Okay.
vacation Rusty is her brother. Um, so, people kind of now, like, calling all attention to that because I don't think a lot of people thought of her as a nepo baby outside of her sister. Um
Well, as you well know, Jeannine, I've always been a Robin Lively fan. We
Yes,
can't,
yeah, our Teen Witch, Karate Kid 3 girly over here. Um, but yeah, so people are kind of calling attention to that as maybe another aspect of her kind of having this entitlement.
mm,
People
possibly.
people reading her and Ryan's relationship as kind of like the football star and the cheerleader who kind of peaked in high school and now is still trying to kinda hold on to that. Like, I've heard many kind of videos describe them as such, people maybe calling attention to the Mr. and Mrs. Smith of their relationship and the fact that they met, her being, like, 11 years younger than him, on Green Lantern while he was married to Scarlett Johansson, and that there was
Mm.
maybe some cheating overlap there. So things are starting to just people kind of pulling things out to, like, add to this narrative that Blake is the problem. So I'm not saying that any of that is true, that is just kind of where people kind of seeing how she's talking about this movie in comparison to Justin, how she's not really advocating for things, how she's really kind of just aloof and dismissive in interviews, and now things m coming out even more kind of against her in that way.
Yeah,
So, I
it's
think
where
the
the
side
conversation's at.
yes, and kind of, the question of do we take sides? Yes, we most certainly do, and people seem to be taking Justin's side in this drama. So I
Yeah,
think it very much feels like, the "Don't Worry, Darling" drama all over again. I think a lot of people were on Florence's side in that and Olivia, and things
yeah.
came out about her, her conversation with Shia and all of that kinda thing came forward. So, yeah, I think definitely in these weird situations, a side is always going to be chosen. And with kind of the internet at your fingertips to then go look into somebody and bring up examples to kind of back up the thought process, it's really kind of not helpful to one side or the other.
No,
So
I would like to just point out, you've just mentioned "Don't Worry, Darling," so close to being such a good movie, so close.
yes, it was very much Stepford Wives, but it just
It
didn't
went it went silly, it went silly.
yes, it went silly, for
Didn't
sure.
know to didn't need to go silly. Um, I love as well, just to kind of end our let's talk, I mean, I kind of love but also hate the idea of people likening Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively to the high school football captain and the cheerleader who peaked and never grew out of that, because they are, I think, in the public consciousness, an incredibly beloved couple.
Yeah, and now it's all
And
kind of crashing
let's
down.
let's not, rain on people's parade, but it's not an inaccurate statement, is it?
I
And I
mean,
think
yeah, when as soon as you say it, you're kinda like, "Well, maybe a little
it
bit."
they
I
they
mean
they do give those vibes, as we say.
yes, yes, and very much, I think playing into the entitlement that people are starting to see in her. I think she's also made comments about how, she doesn't really know how to act any different than, like, herself, so, like, most of the
That's
characters she
not acting,
plays
that is it really.
exactly. So, most of the characters she plays ends up being like her because I don't know if we really talk too much about her acting ability in Green Lantern, how she just wasn't very good at trying to play this, like, tough kinda character kinda thing, and then you look at the
I
characters
don't
she's
remember.
played see, not even good enough to remember. Um, but I think even in the films that she's done, throughout her career, they're all kind of various versions of who she portrays herself to be in the public eye.
Well, I mean, look,
So
sometimes I suppose it depends on the movie, because I think that is a thing that we commend some old Hollywood actors and actresses for doing, essentially playing the very similar roles time and time and time again.
yes.
It might just be a case of the Hollywood you're living in at that point, or this point,
But
obviously,
I
and
think
what that demands from you.
yes, but I think there's also a difference between this person being really good at that and this
I mean, that's
person
also true.
just feeling like that's all they can do, and even
Yeah,
then it's not that good.
there's a difference between this and Bogart, for example, who
Yes, or even like
very,
with
very frequently seems to play the exact same
yeah.
kind of person.
Yes, or like I think, we talked about it with Costner. He kind of plays the
Costner,
same kind
yeah.
of chill guy, but yet every film he's able to bring some type of lovable charm and nuance to whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
So even if you are kind of somebody stuck in a rut of doing the same thing or being someone very close to what we see you as in the public eye, you still have to be good at that at least. Like,
Yeah.
Michael Cera plays this kind of like quirky, fast
Michael
talking, nervous
Cera.
guy, but he does it well in everything he's in, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, if you
so
have a shtick, there's nothing wrong with having a shtick as long as you do it well.
yes, and I think she does it kind of very mediocre. I mean, I
Mm.
liked her in something like A Simple Favor, which is funny because in that movie, she's really playing kind of a terrible person. So the fact that she was really good at
Maybe she's
playing a
just good at doing
terrible
that, but
person,
maybe she's good at doing
at
that
playing
because
this
she
kind of
doesn't want
mean
to
girl
embrace it.
character.
Yeah,
Yes.
she doesn't want to embrace it for her own image
Yeah.
reasons, perhaps, and I don't know, maybe it takes
Yeah.
time to get over that sort of stuff. It's certainly an interesting conversation, it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing to think about. I think, admittedly, it's getting people to go and watch that movie,
I mean, and The King and the Queen of the Prom, I mean, his movie's number 1, her movie's number 2, and that's never
right?
this is the first time it's happened since I think, like, Bruce and Demi in the '90s when
Pretty
he had
impressive, to be
I
fair.
think he had, like, Die Hard 2 was number 1 and Ghost was number 2 or something like that.
When was Die Hard? Possibly something like that, to be honest. I
Yeah,
think maybe. I don't know when Die Hard 2 was. Ghost was 1990, obviously.
yeah.
We know that. Um, should we move in to some fun and games to end
Yes.
this episode, though, Jeannine? I think we have some feud-based fun and games today.
Yes. So I
Hollywood
kn
feud-based
yes.
ones.
Yes, I mean, I know, your favorite game is 6 Degrees. So
Oh, yes.
I
Right.
only did 3, so I'm gonna
Oh,
give
only
you
three.
2 actors who had a feud, but you can't use the movie or the franchise that they were in together to bring them back together
Oh,
again. So I'll give you
okay.
2
That's very.
actors who feuded for whatever movie they were in, but you can't use that
But it's
movie
got to.
or franchise of films they were in
I mean, that
to
makes sense.
to bring them back together again. So,
That's fair. That would be
yeah.
far too easy. So these
Yes.
2 were on this movie, but no, you can't do
Yes.
that.
So
I
I only
have.
did 3 just in case it, kinda takes you a minute to
Oh, I mean, which
but
it probably.
I think they're pretty easy, so
You always think they're pretty easy, and it's never is. I have one of our nice lists. I
okay.
have the 10 most volatile on-set movies.
Ooh, okay.
It's a collider list, actually.
Okay, is this
It's
a
a
classic
collider list.
Hollywoods again for me?
It has various, to be honest with you, and given that there's 10, I'm just gonna clue you onto each of them. You don't necessarily have to. I mean, you can guess some
Okay.
right off the bat if you want. We can go for all 10. I will offer clues as and when you need them, but this is directly the 10 most volatile
Ooh.
on-set movie feuds. So it can be actor
Okay.
to actor, it can be actor to director, it can be
Ooh,
as long as it's person to person.
okay.
What do you think we have here?
Betty Davis and Joan Crawford?
Are quite obviously number 1.
Okay.
Yes, depending on
Um,
what you may think about their thing. What my favourite aspect of Betty Davis and Joan Crawford is the fact that it might have all been because Joan Crawford really just fell in love with Betty Davis and she couldn't hack it.
oh, maybe, maybe.
It might have been that. But let's not spread those kind of things.
Ooh,
Let's just say what I often like to say, and that I enjoy both Betty Davis and Joan Crawford very,
yes.
very much.
Um, let's see.
Well, should we go through? At number 2, we
Okay.
have a incredibly notorious director, very good director, certainly very good director of his time, but we don't talk about him anymore for very obvious reasons.
Ooh.
And a lead actress in one of his most notable movies, perhaps his best movie in the early
Oh.
70s.
Oh. Uh, Mia Farrow and Roman Polanski?
Oh, it's very close. It is Polanski, but it's with
Ooh.
Faye Dunaway from China.
Oh, Chinatown. Okay, okay.
Yes. Um, number 3 is an interesting one. We have a director with the entire cast of a certain movie. This certain movie was from 1989, a
Oh.
female group movie.
Mm.
Very big names in this movie, one after the other, and a director that none of them got on with at all, and he didn't get on with any of them. This movie stars in a very early role, or an early-ish role, I suppose, Julia Roberts.
Oh. Is it Steel
Mm.
Magnolias?
Steel Magnolias, yes, the director Herbert Ross and the entire cast of Steel Magnolias.
Herbert
Um,
Ross? Oh my goodness. Director of
um,
Footloose and
yes, apparently he was incredibly harsh
oh,
on set
wow.
with everybody,
Okay.
and obviously you have a lot of
Yeah.
very notable women in that movie
Oh,
who
yes.
probably won't take lightly
Oh, yeah.
having nasty things said. um, Dolly Parton and Shirley MacLaine and
Yes.
Sally Field
Sally
and
Field
such,
and yeah.
Olympia Dukakis and people like
Yes.
that. Yes, we
Yeah,
don't
very
want things said.
headstrong females. Yeah.
Next up, we have another very unlikable director who
It's
inexplicably
just
still keeps getting movies made, and in a movie from 1999, his cast from a movie in 1999. I
also the
didn't
whole
realize.
cast.
Yeah, well, the lead cast, the lead 3 cast, apparently, according to this article. If I'd say this director
Oh,
inexplicably keeps
I
making
think I
movies.
recently heard about this because this person did a interview where he said he couldn't stand this person in this movie. Would
Okay.
it be, David O. Russell?
It is, yes,
And
with
the cast of 3 Kings,
the
particularly George
cast of
Clooney?
Kings,
Yes.
particularly
Yeah,
George Clooney.
the
Yes,
the
very good.
September issue of GQ, he's in this photo shoot with Brad Pitt, and he is very candid about people he just did not care to work with.
Mm,
Yeah.
as we know, David O. Russell go away with him.
Yes. People still working with him. Mm.
This particular feud came about on the 2000 Charlie's Angels movie.
Ah, well, this one will come up in my questions for you.
Ah, very
Lucy
exciting.
Liu and, Bill Murray. Yes.
Yes, don't be getting on at all with it.
Yeah.
No. This is a known to be incredibly volatile actor with um, a member of the team. I think it was a director of photography on this
Ooh.
particular franchise movie. It was a very famous audio released bit of audio that came out in the late
Oh, yes,
2000s.
Christian Bale and that guy person on
Yes,
Terminator
on
Salvation.
Terminator Salvation. Yes,
Yeah.
it was very unnecessary. Here we have again 2 people who you could consider to be fairly volatile, although one of them maybe just plays volatile characters very
Mhm.
well. He's quite soft in real life, to be honest with you, I think. And one I can never make heads or tails of. I've actually met him, one of them here. This was a movie from 2012, where they were the 2 leads of this movie and did not get on at all.
Simon Pegg and somebody?
No, it is not Simon Pegg. No, it is not Simon Pegg. A very
Oh,
unusual
Shia LaBeouf?
Shire and who this is a
Tom
movie
Hardy?
and Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
Yes, very good. Don't get on at all there. Although Tom Hardy's back in this one
Oh,
for a
yes.
franchise movie
Yes, him and Charlize on
in
Fury
Charlie's
Road.
Theron.
Yeah.
Don't be getting on either. Here we have another uh, known to be difficult actor that caused himself out of a lot of money in the MCU because he couldn't get on with people. But this movie is from years before, and this is the director of said movie, who did not get on at all with this particular, known to be a little bit particular actor, even before they started making this movie. And this movie is in itself an incredibly difficult movie, as it deals with horrific people
Ooh,
from the mid to late 90s.
mid to late 90s superhero movie?
Not superhero movie. Don't think about superhero
Oh,
movie. I'm
okay.
saying the actor did himself out of a lot of money in a superhero franchise because he couldn't just do what was asked of him and wanted to make it all about himself. Which
Oh,
which might have been for the benefit of the movie, but certainly wasn't for the benefit of himself.
oh.
Caused a casting change in a very famous superhero movie series.
So, that happened before he had the opportunity to do the superhero series?
This particular feud happened years prior, on a completely different movie. I'm just giving that superhero movie
Oh,
context
context.
because of the actor in question.
Hmm.
The superhero movie is from 2008, but we're not talking about that.
Yes.
Who is the actor?
Oh. So it's either Iron Man or Incredible Hulk.
Yes, and who is the actor? Who is the incredibly difficult actor that nobody likes working with from one of those movies?
Who could have been in them but wasn't in them?
Who could have continued in them, but
Oh.
caused himself not to, because he couldn't just compromise.
Oh, Terrence Howard? Or
No, I forgot about Terrence Howard, but no, not Terrence.
Edward Norton?
Ed Norton is
Mm,
there, of course. Now, this is a very famous movie of his from the late 90s, where he didn't get on with the director at all. A very harsh movie, a horrible movie, about horrible.
American History X?
Yes, the director,
Mm.
Tony Kaye.
Oh, okay.
Didn't like Ed
Yeah.
Norton, didn't like Ed Norton, clashed on the
Mm.
set of that movie, where you can imagine there's a lot of clashing going on
Oh,
anyway.
yes, yes. Mm.
And lastly, we have a very good movie that I've only recently watched for the first time, thanks to
Oh,
Morgan hasn't seen.
ooh.
One of those movies that I was always told to watch and never did, out of pure stubbornness, despite the
Mm.
fact I very much enjoyed the movie when I did watch it. And this all boils down, this feud isn't really a feud. I don't think it's just a disagreement on a particular important point to do with this movie
Okay.
that has caused conversation after conversation in the years since,
Interesting. When is this
and
movie
continues
from?
to cause conversations. The movie is from the early 80s.
Oh,
The movie is a very good movie.
okay. And we recently watched it?
Reasonably recently on
Oh,
done on Morgan hasn't seen, yes. Um, it's a philosophical point about the movie that its lead and director vehemently disagree
oh,
on, and it is
early
one side
'80s.
that, yes,
Mm.
very two quite, good likable people generally,
On
uh,
their own accord. Mm.
on their own. The director is still making movies. The actor is still making movies. Um,
Oh,
we certainly very much like the actor always. He's very,
and you
very
really liked the
good
movie?
gentleman. And I did very much like the movie. Yes.
What did we cover that was in the 80s recently?
A very large, an incredibly big movie. Incredibly big movie.
What?
Very famous movie. What is the movie that Morgan hasn't seen was really all about? Or should have been all about? The biggest movie Morgan hasn't seen in history.
Seriously?
I would
Why why is my brain not thinking?
It is a science fiction movie.
Oh my god, like
It has a sequel, and I believe it's going to have another sequel. A
what?
legacy sequel. That came by the legacy sequel was made by a director I can't stand the sight of because I don't like his fan base. Not Nolan, the other one.
Oh.
This is
Why?
not as difficult as you're
I
making it out.
know, it's not. It shouldn't be. It's like on the tip of my brain, like all of the elements are like just floating around and they're like, you know.
The director is the director has recently made a legacy sequel to a movie of his own from just over 20 years ago that's set to come out in December.
Oh. Why is my brain not working right now?
About Rome
Oh. Okay.
and fighting.
Yes, Ridley Scott.
Yes. Made a science fiction movie in the early 80s.
What movie did we do?
Outrageous that you haven't got
Oh my gosh,
it.
Blade Runner. Blade Blade Runner. I'm sorry.
Yes. Lastly, we had Harrison Ford versus Ridley Scott on the
Oh,
concept of
yes.
replicants.
Yes, they couldn't decide on
Blade Runner.
yeah. Mm.
Can't agree on if Deckard's a replicant or not. Still to this day.
Mm. Yes. Oh my gosh, I don't know why that took me so long to
No, neither do I. Let's do about 4 hours of 6 degrees now, just
okay,
to let
all
fun
right.
and games last the entire
I know. The last half of the
time of
show.
the rest of the show.
All right. So 6 degrees between feuding actors. You can't use the movie they did together.
Okay.
So we have Vin Diesel to
Mm.
Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who famously had
Oh,
a
yeah.
feud on the Fast and Furious films.
Now you're telling me I can't use Fast and Furious at all?
Nothing Fast and Furious.
Then I'm going to struggle with Vin Diesel. Oh, I can use Guardians of the Galaxy, I suppose, can't I?
Yeah, so I have made my own. So if you need,
Okay, so let's
it's a
use
very quick one. Mine was done in 3.
let's use Guardians of the Galaxy then, which has a reasonable size cast, doesn't it?
Mhm.
And for Dwayne Johnson, let's try and get to what's Dwayne Johnson in that's not Fast and Furious. I don't really like Dwayne Johnson. I don't. What's a movie that he's in? He's in those Jumanji movies
Who's
with
in those Jumanji movies with him?
Jack Black. Jack Black's in those movies. Karen Gillan's in those movies. Who's in Guardians of the Galaxy?
There you
That'll do.
go.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you
All
very much.
right. Julia Roberts and Nick
Mm,
Nolte did a movie together in the 90s called I Love Trouble, where they were feuding journalists for different
ah,
newspapers, and they famously despised each other on this film.
oh wow.
Um, so Julia Roberts to Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte. Um, Nick Nolte, I think the easiest thing to possibly go would be Cape Fear, just for my
Okay.
because I can get to De Niro from there, and that widens my
Mhm.
perspective
That's
slightly.
where I'll let you know that's where I went. So you're
Okay,
on the
that's
right track.
good. To Julia Roberts. Julia Roberts, we can go to Julia Roberts. I feel like I always have to go to Pretty Woman, therefore Richard Gere, and therefore Chicago, because that has a
Okay.
large
It
cast as
does.
well. And then I've got to De Niro to Chicago. And I feel like I'm going to do the same thing I did a few times ago and go to a Scorsese movie for De Niro and then just do a director version to DiCaprio and then Gangs of New York and then John C. Reilly and if you'll let me have that. You're not going to let me have that.
No.
Unless I can pick a specific actor, aren't you? That's in like the two eras of Scorsese.
Yes. I mean, I used De Niro and Cape
Use De
Fear.
Niro and Cape Fear. You're right,
Yes.
but you use De Niro to get to somebody to get to Julia Roberts.
Yes.
The thing is, Julia Roberts and me isn't a very wide scope.
Okay.
Unfortunately. Which is why I always go Pretty Woman, Richard Gere, Chicago, which becomes bigger.
Okay.
To
So
me.
that's what you would do. Then the John C. Reilly and then
John C. Reilly in Gangs of New York, which is just, again, it's a big one. So you go to like somebody in Gangs of New York, which is DiCaprio, and then I'm going tangentially through Scorsese to De Niro.
Yes, but she's done
But you're
things.
not
Well,
gonna let me.
No, you can do that. They've worked together before. I mean, there is a recent movie that DiCaprio and De Niro have done together.
There is, and I temporarily forgot about Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yes.
Sorry about that one. I
Okay.
realised they now did one together.
Yes.
That's not good of me, is it? That's not
No,
good of me.
that's okay. No, I mean, I was flailing on your game with the very easy one. So,
Oh,
my route
sorry,
was
everyone.
my route was Julia Roberts in Hook with Dustin Hoffman, who was in Meet the Fockers with De Niro, who was in
Oh,
Cape
that's
Fear with
right.
Mo.
I forget Julia Roberts was Tinkerbell in Hook.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
do. That's a good one to go. Thank you for reminding me of that. I can use Hook for Julia Roberts.
Yes. And my final one, as I mentioned, Bill Murray to Lucy Liu, because they had a
Yeah.
famous feud on the set of Charlie's Angels.
Well, Lucy Liu, Kill Bill, that's a big cast.
It's
Who
also
else
what
is
I
in Kill
did.
Bill? It's also a specific cast, though, isn't it? Uma Thurman. No, that's a bad one to go. Is Uma Thurman a bad one to go to? Because you can also
No,
then
I
go to
used
Pulp Fiction, which is a big cast. And to get to Bill Murray, you can go through. Here's one for you. You won't have thought of
okay.
this way unless you have. You can go to Sam Jackson in Pulp Fiction. You can go to the general MCU for Sam Jackson, of which Paul Rudd's involved, of which Bill Murray was in Ant-Man Quantumania.
What?
Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
Okay.
Bill Murray was in.
Bill Murray was in Quantumania?
Bill
Oh,
Murray was
yeah, he was. He was, but he was also you could have used the newest Ghostbusters movies as well.
I could have used the Ghostbusters. You're quite right. I was. Yeah, I
'Cause
could,
I
but I
totally
won't.
forgot he was in I totally forgot he was in Quantumania.
He was.
Yes, I did an interesting thing. Bill Murray was in Fantastic Mr. Fox with George Clooney, who was in Batman and Robin with Uma,
Fair.
Poison Ivy, and Kill Bill with Lucy Liu.
Fair. I don't think about doing voices,
Yeah.
I never think about doing the voice actors.
No,
Very
that's
nice,
good.
very
I
nice.
totally forgot about oh my god,
Why
Yeah.
would you remember? Why would
Right?
you remember at this
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
Good 6 degrees, good 6
Yeah.
degrees. Very
Yeah.
nice. Good show. Interesting
Yay.
discussions on today's Monday Madness. It was certainly nice to be back here, starting the week off right on Monday Madness. It, of course, is not the only show we have. on the It's a Wonderful Podcast feed, nor is it the only thing on the It's a Wonderful Podcast YouTube channel. Subscribe here, ding your notification bell, subscribe to the podcast feed on all major podcast platforms, leave your comments, leave your likes, answer the questions that we put on the videos and across the social medias as well. If you want to join us on Patreon or donate in any way, there are links in the description to go and do that. Morgan Hasn't Seen is every Wednesday. It's a Wonderful Podcast, the main show, celebrating old movies, is every Friday, of course. Brave New Women and 5 decades of musicals are the current series over there. And, of course, if you do want to find us on social media, of course, for those questions, leave your answers. We read out the answers on episodes of Morgan Hasn't Seen and the main show. For any answers we do get for the questions pertaining to a certain movie or topic we're talking about on that or on a previous episode. You can find us on the app formerly known as Twitter at It's a Wonderful One. Find me there at the Purple Dawn with a 3 instead of the E in the because, Jeannine.
3 is a magic number.
On Instagram and TikTok at the Purple Dawn. All your feuding is where.
You can find me at Jeannine Devine _ on Twitter, Jeannine Devine on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads. If you want to get any merch for any of our shows, just check the description for the link or search It's a Wonderful Podcast on teespring.com. And if you want to purchase any of my art in print form, you can find that at my Big Cartel shop, g9design.bigcartel.com.
Well, there we go indeed. Jeannine, I thought I'd throw that in right at the end. There is only one thing left to do. And please, in your best impression of an entitled white girl from LA.
3, 2, 1. Do you know who I am?
Oh, it's so Blake Lively. Is she even from LA? I don't know.